From 90.7 WFAE, this is Newsworthy for Thursday, May 7th, 2026. I'm Eric Teal. The North Carolina Senate gave final approval Wednesday to Senate Bill 889, which halts property tax revaluation changes in 2026. The bill freezes any proposed property value adjustments from a reappraisal, but would allow those values to take effect next year. The pause gives the General Assembly more time to put forward additional property tax proposals. The bill passed with a 35-8 vote. It now goes to the House of Representatives for consideration. Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools says some information connected to student Canvas accounts may have been accessed during a recent cybersecurity incident involving the platform's parent company, Instructure. District officials say there's no indication passwords, social security numbers, or financial information was exposed, and there's no evidence that the alleged hackers still have access. CMS says it has added additional safety measures after learning of the breach. Families are urged to watch for suspicious emails or messages. State regulators recently passed an unusual order that put a pause on Duke Energy's new solar energy development in North Carolina. Zachary Turner has more on a challenge to that order.
The Southern Environmental Law Center filed a motion with the North Carolina Utility Commission to reconsider the order, calling it arbitrary and capricious. The order was unusual for a few reasons. Only Utility Commission Chair William Brawley issued it, and the commission didn't hold a public hearing before making a decision. It also paused solar procurements that the commission greenlit during the last carbon plan, which the commission approved in 2024. The SCLC argued that an expedited review of the order is in the public interest, as these solar, quote, missing megawatts risk the reliability and affordability of Duke Energy's service. Zachary Turner, WFAE News.
Mecklenburg County says it's taking steps to ensure youth in foster care receive regular 90-day reviews involving their parents, caregivers, and others connected to their case. The move comes after an advocacy group surveyed local foster parents and found those quarterly reviews were happening in only a handful of cases. In a statement, Mecklenburg County acknowledged some meetings were not consistently tracked and said staff have now been assigned to help ensure the reviews happen. Jocelyn Reed is a former foster parent with the group Path to Permanency, which sounded the alarm.
We kind of view this as a great step in the right direction, but the work's not done. Now it's kind of our chance to track it and report it and maintain some accountability.
Reed says the group plans to continue surveying foster parents going forward and thank the county for its response. An AI data center developer is suing the city of Kings Mountain. WJZY reports that a limited liability corporation based in Miami called HB2K owns about 80 acres just off I-85 next to the Kings Mountain Energy Center. HB2K says the property is approved for a 150 to 300 megawatt AI data center campus. The developer is accusing the city of trespassing, saying it's attempting to take a portion of the property without due process of law and without just compensation. The issue stems from the public utilities infrastructure HB2K claims is on the land unlawfully. Kings Mountain is in the midst of a 6-month moratorium on new data center projects. A Cuban man living in Charlotte died last week while in federal immigration custody in Georgia. Julian Berger has more.
U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officials say 33-year-old Denny Adan Gonzalez died last Tuesday at the Stored Detention Center in Georgia. The Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office says Gonzalez was arrested in Charlotte in December on domestic violence charges. ICE lodged an immigration detainer the following day. Gonzalez was initially denied bond and spent over a month in custody at the Mecklenburg County Detention Center. A judge modified his release in late January to a $2,500 bond, which was posted the same day. Gonzalez was then transferred into ICE custody one day later. Gonzalez's death marks the 18th reported death of a person in ICE custody so far this year. ICE reported 31 deaths last year, the highest number in 2 decades. An investigation into the cause is ongoing. Julian Berger, WFAE News.
A longtime cotton manufacturing company in Plaza Midwood will repurpose and industrialize for multiple uses. Kenneth Lee has more.
Barnhart Manufacturing Company has filed a rezoning application for part of its longtime campus and what could be one of the biggest redevelopments in the area. The Charlotte-based cotton manufacturer is seeking to rezone about 21 acres of its 35-acre site on Hawthorne Lane from industrial use to neighborhood center conditional zoning, in line with the city's 2040 land use plan. That could bring apartments, shops, and other uses. Company leaders say the filing begins a long-term planning process. Chairman and CEO Tom Barnhart says operations will continue as normal for now. The company has operated at the site for 125 years. Kenneth Lee, WFAE News.
Charlotte Mayor Vi Lyle's lack of attendance at meetings and sometimes awkward public speaking appearances has raised concern privately among many community leaders as to whether she'll finish her term, which ends in December of 2027. Steve Harrison has this report.
According to the City of Charlotte's charter, the city's mayor shall preside over all city council meetings. But Lyles, who is 73, has only attended 2 monthly city council zoning meetings since the end of 2024, and those were to conduct other city-related business. She has outsourced the job of leading the zoning meetings, first to Democratic Councilmember Dante Anderson, and then to Republican Ed Driggs. In addition to the mayor stepping back from some of her official duties, a half-dozen council members, business, and community leaders have told WFAE privately that the mayor struggles to communicate as well as she has in the past. At a recent meeting in April, she appeared confused.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here. Good evening. I think it's evening, but you never can tell in this weather.
WFAE asked Lyles this week about her health and whether she would finish her term. She declined to answer and was then escorted away, first by her longtime assistant Kay Cunningham and then a Charlotte Mecklenburg police officer. WFAE also asked the city for a statement on the mayor's future, but did not receive a response. Lyles is the city's second longest-serving mayor, after Pat McCrory. Previously, she worked in the city's budget office for almost her entire career, rising to assistant city manager. Steve Harrison, WFAE News.
A new exhibit on display at the Mint Museum is inspired by the iconic Met Gala ceremony. Elvis Menayese has more on the artwork that's meant to highlight contributions from groups often overlooked.
Gold mannequins hang on the walls, sculptures, and a mural that aims to showcase the power and versatility of women are on display in Uptown. The Feminine Forum exhibit is curated by Savannah College of Art and Design professor Perrin DeShield Jenkins.
So today I feel like femininity is a source of power. It's a source of strength. It's something that we want everyone to embrace, regardless of your gender.
The exhibit included a runway show and gala to give local artists a version of the Met Gala. Over 30 artists are part of the exhibit that mostly includes women from minority groups.
Typically, we're left out of those initial conversations, and so I really wanted to put it in the forefront and continue to give a platform that isn't typically, accessible for us.
The exhibit is on display until June 3rd. Elvis Menayese, WFAE News.
North Carolina's seasonally adjusted unemployment rate for March was 3.7%, decreasing a tenth of a percentage point from February's revised rate. The national rate also decreased a tenth of a percentage point to 4.3%. Atrium Health made some big waves in the state's healthcare system last week when news got out that they planned to merge with Triangle-based WakeMed. The multi-billion-dollar deal faced swift pushback, both because of how quickly and quietly it was announced and because of the effect of hospital consolidation on prices and patient care. For more, Adam Wagner of the North Carolina Newsroom in Raleigh spoke with our Nick Delacanal.
Catch us up to speed on where things stand.
So the Wake County Board of Commissioners needs to update the incorporation agreement that originally formed WakeMed back in the 1960s, as well as a couple of land transfer agreements. These were announced last Friday on a consent agenda, and they were set to be voted on Monday evening. After hearing a lot of pushback from state officials like the state treasurer, Brad Briner, the state auditor, Dave Bullock, as well as a handful of Wake County legislators, Republicans Aaron Paray and Mike Sheetzel, commissioners decided that they are just going to press pause on this for a minute.
And we've seen several major hospital system mergers in the past few years. Why does Atrium want to combine with WakeMed? What's the business case?
The biggest argument for Atrium is that Atrium has a huge presence in Charlotte, obviously. They also have a significant presence in Winston-Salem. So they are looking for a foothold in the triangle.
But as we've said, there are some state officials who are against this, right? I guess what concerns have they raised?
So there's basically two lines of it. One is transparency, and this was really brought up by State Auditor Dave Bullock, who argued that this has been going on behind closed doors, obviously, for a while. So what do they know? Why do they want it? Can we get the community up to speed on where this deal is before there's this kind of necessary vote? The other strand is cost. When hospital systems merge, costs go up. There is a huge body of research that shows this cost for patients. This is typically, it's somewhere in the ballpark of 6 to 12% is what Treasurer Brad Briner told me yesterday, which, might not sound like that much, but when you're talking about thousands of dollars or, expensive surgeries, things like that, those can be huge. And when you're talking about the scale of a state health plan or an insurance plan, that's an awful lot of money.
And to that first point about transparency, I think one thing that did catch a lot of people off guard was the way this news dropped on Friday with the vote scheduled for Monday. So, it felt like maybe they were trying to slip this through without giving time for backlash to build. Have the hospitals responded to that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a sense of that, especially among some of the lawmakers. You saw Aaron Pere kind of tweet about this on Monday even. The hospitals say that they needed to do this deal quietly, that they were really doing the work in the background on each other that's been going on for 2 years, that this deal dates back in some ways to a COVID-era partnership between WakeMed and Atrium around cancer care. And that really got the systems kind of talking, and they realized that they're aligned in a lot of ways. They both started as community hospitals, and those conversations built and built and built until we got to where we are today.
That is Adam Wagner. He will be following the deal. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Nick.
Last week at this time, we talked about big changes in the works for part of South Tryon in uptown Charlotte. This week, I talk about changes that could be coming to a prominent block in Plaza Midwood. The Charlotte Ledger Business Newsletter's Ashley Fay spoke with our Marshall Terry for our segment BizWorthy.
So what's the newest site for redevelopment in Plaza Midwood, and how big are the plans?
This is a site a lot of folks have probably driven past and had no idea what was actually going on there, but it's the Barnhart Manufacturing site on Hawthorne Lane. It's right behind the Overton Row apartments, which famously wrapped the Thirsty Beaver Saloon on Central. It's 35 acres, which is a very large assemblage. You just don't see that anymore in Plaza Midwood or really any of the urban neighborhoods around Charlotte. Barnhart is looking to rezone about 21 of those acres. I spoke with some of the company leaders recently, and they're quick to note we haven't made any firm decisions about what we're doing, but I do think them filing a rezoning is significant. This is a neighborhood that's obviously seen a lot of change, so this is the first step in that process.
Yeah, as you said, Plaza Midwood is a neighborhood that already has a lot of changes teed up, right?
Yeah, and this, like I said, 35 acres. To put it into context, the Commonwealth project, which recently finished construction at Central and Pecan Avenues, where Scout Motors is putting its headquarters, is actually less than half of the site as far as the acreage. So while the density might not be as high on this Barnhart Manufacturing site, the rezoning they're seeking, it's still a major, I think, opportunity, and I'll be very interested to see kind of what happens here.
First quarter data from CoStar Group show the number of apartments developers broke ground on in the Charlotte area has fallen to its lowest number in 11 years. Population is still growing, so what gives and what does this mean for renters?
Yeah, I think this is kind of the after effect of so much apartment supply that had been built in the wake of the pandemic. We saw just kind of record starts, record construction, kind of in that 2022 timeframe. And a lot of those units have been delivering over the past couple of years, which means especially in sort of that urban luxury segment and even some suburban properties, there's just a lot of supply right now. A lot of apartment owners are actually offering concessions, free rent for a period of time, discounts on their their rental rates. So I guess if you're in the market for an apartment right now, now might be a good time to look. But I do know the market's kind of closely watching when the inflection point is. We are starting to see more move-ins than we did a year ago, which suggests that maybe a year from now, that trend could start to change and we'll start to see more development again.
Sticking with apartments for a moment, something called micro apartments are being planned in South End. What are those and where would they be located exactly?
It's at 1722 South Tryon Street. It's near the Dimensional Fund Advisors headquarters. Basically, it sounds like these 84 apartments that they're planning will average 363 square feet, which is quite small. We have seen a few other kind of so-called micro unit projects be built in areas like South End. It feels like it's maybe becoming more of a trend as land runs out in South End and folks maybe are putting more of a premium on location versus the size of units. But it sounds like this development will include things like robotic furniture systems to try to maximize space. I'm curious to see what in practice this will look like.
Finally, JetBlue is returning to Charlotte Douglas after the collapse of Spirit last weekend. What can travelers expect?
We'll have to see how many flights they add. They're starting with 3 nonstop flights a day between Fort Lauderdale and Charlotte. As a more affordable option, it could maybe mitigate some of the concerns some folks were having about what airfare would look like at Charlotte if Spirit Airlines left. So I guess we'll keep an eye on to see what the cost looks like with JetBlue re-entering the market.
Okay, thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Marshall.
Support for BizWorthy comes from the law office of Robertson and Associates and Central Piedmont Community College. And for Thursday, May 7th, that's Newsworthy. I'm Eric Teal.